Okay, my friends, so now let's add a new tool to our data preprocessing toolkit, which is taking care of missing data. So indeed, if we have a look again at our dataset, data.csv, we notice that there is a missing salary here for this specific customer from Germany of 40 years old and who purchased the product. So generally, you don't want to have any missing data in your dataset for the simple reason that it can cause some errors when training your machine learning model, and therefore you must handle them. There are actually several ways to handle them. A first way is to just ignore the observation by deleting it. That's one method, and this actually works if you have a large dataset and if you have only 1% missing data, removing 1% of the observations won't change much the learning quality of your model, so 1% is fine, but sometimes you can have a lot of missing data and therefore you must handle them the right way. So that was the first way, to ignore them, to remove them. And now a second way, and this is what we're adding right now in the toolkit, is to actually replace the missing data, the missing value, by the average of all the values in the column in which the data is missing. So here we have a missing salary. What we want to do is to replace this missing salary by the average of all these salaries. This is a classic way of handling missing data, and I'm going to teach it to you right away. So here we go, taking care of missing data. Let's create a new code cell and let's replace that missing salary by the average of all the salaries here. All right. So to do this, we're going to use the libraries, and actually I'm about to introduce you to one of the best data science libraries. I'm talking about scikit-learn. Scikit-learn is an amazing data science library containing a lot of tools, including a lot of data preprocessing tools. You will see that we will actually use scikit-learn a lot in this course. More than half of the machine learning models we will build in this course will be built with scikit-learn. So if you don't know scikit-learn yet, I'm telling you, you're going to absolutely love it. And so for the first time here, we're going to use scikit-learn to handle missing data. And to do this, the class that we're going to use from scikit-learn is called SimpleImputer. We're actually going to first import that SimpleImputer class. Then we will create an instance, an object of the SimpleImputer class. This object will allow us to exactly replace this missing salary here by the average of the salaries, and then we will have an updated data set, an updated actually matrix of features, because we will apply this imputer on the matrix of features only. So we'll have a new matrix of features with no missing data because the missing salary will have been replaced by the average salary. All right, let's do this. Perfect. So first, since this class belongs to scikit-learn, well, we're going to start here by going from scikit-learn, which has the name sklearn. So sklearn, then remember, in order to access a module, we have to add a dot, because actually this SimpleImputer class, which we want to import, belongs to a certain module of scikit-learn called impute. This one, impute. And from this impute module, well, we're going to import, there we go, the SimpleImputer class. See, Google Colab really assists you well. SimpleImputer class, perfect. Then, next step. As I said, the next step is to create an instance of this class, which you can exactly see as the tool itself. The tool that you'll use to replace that missing salary by the average of salaries. So, since we're about to create a new object, well, we have to introduce here a new variable. And we're going to call this variable imputer. Okay, imputer, which will be exactly this object of the SimpleImputer class. And therefore, since it will be the object of the SimpleImputer class, well, we have naturally to call this class SimpleImputer. So I'm going to copy this and paste that here. That's how you create an object of the class. You simply call the class, then you add some parentheses, and there you go. Now you're going to enter the right arguments in order to replace indeed this missing salary by the average of salaries. Because note that there are actually many replacements that you could do. You could, instead of replacing it by the average salary, you could replace it by the median salary. There is a difference between the average and the median. You could also replace a missing value by the most frequent value, right? That would be, for example, relevant for categories. Okay, so you have many options, but the most classic one and the one option that I recommend is the average salary, the mean salary. okay? And so that's exactly what we have to enter here. First, we have to specify which missing values we have to replace. And so that's why we have to enter here first argument called missing values, which has to be equal to np, the numpy library .nan. And that's just to say that we want to replace all the missing value in the dataset, like this one. This is like an empty value. This is what this means, an empty value. And then the second argument we have to input here is exactly the one saying that indeed the missing values here, the empty values of the dataset, will be replaced by the mean. And to do this, we have to add the next argument here, which is strategy. And this argument will be equal to, in quote, mean, okay? And that's just to say that we want indeed to replace all the missing values in the matrix of features by the mean of the feature itself, okay? Then, almost last step. Now, remember, this is just an object. We haven't connected anything yet to our matrix of features. So the next step is indeed to apply this inputter object on the matrix of features. So how are we going to do that? Well, remember that a class contains an ensemble of instructions, but also some operations and actions which you can apply to other objects or variables. And these are called methods, they're like functions. And one of them is exactly the fit method. The fit method will exactly connect this inputter to the matrix of features. In other words, what this fit method will do is it will look at the missing values in the salary column, and also it will compute the average of the salaries. All right, so that's simply what it will do. And then that will not be enough to do the replacement we want. To do the replacement, we'll have to call another method called transform, and which will this time apply the transformation, meaning it will replace the missing salary here by the average of the salaries. Okay, so let's do this. Let's first call the fit method. In order to do this, well, of course, we have to call first our object, inputter. And then from this object, adding a dot, we will call the fit method, which has some parentheses because it's like a function inside a class. And what does this function expect as argument? Well, it simply expects all the columns of X with numerical values, but only the ones with numerical values, not the ones with text or strings categories. And so, well, how do we get this column? Well, first, let's get the matrix of features X, because that's where we want to replace the missing data. And from this matrix of features X, well, first we're going to look at all the rows. This fit method will read the whole column that we specify inside this fit method. But then for the columns, here, we could specify all the columns where to look for some missing data. However, this first column has danger. It is a column with strings, and therefore this might cause a warning or an error when looking for some missing data here. Therefore, we're only going to specify these columns with only real numbers, age and salary. And therefore here we're going to enter the range from 1 to, be careful not 2, because remember the upper bound of a range in Python is excluded. So if we exclude 2, this will exclude the salary. Therefore we have to go up to 3, okay? Up to 3. So that, well, this fit method will look for all the missing values in the age column and the salary column. So here we're specifying specific columns, which are the age column and the salary column. And that's because we know that there is a missing salary. And by the way, there is also a missing age. However, I recommend on a general rule to select all the numerical columns, because in your career you will actually work with huge data sets and you won't be able to see where the missing values are. So just include all the numerical columns to make sure to replace any missing data. Remember to exclude these ones, the string columns, okay? So that's just something important to consider. And then here we go. This will connect our inputter to our matrix of features. And now, final step, we have to call the transform method, once again from our inputter object. And so this transform method will exactly do that replacement of the missing salary here by the mean of the salaries. And same for the missing age, it will be replaced by the mean of all the ages in the age column. And so according to you, what do we have to input here? Well, there is no trap here. We of course have to input the columns of X where we want to replace missing data. And so these are the age column and the salary column. And therefore, we simply have to input exactly the same as what was input in the fit method. So we're just going to take this, copy this, and paste that inside the transform method. However, be careful, this transform method actually returned the new updated version of the matrix of features X with the two replacements of the missing salary and the missing age. And therefore, what we want to do now, and that's the last thing we have to do, is to indeed update our matrix of features X. And to do this, well, since this exactly returns these two columns here with that replacement done, well, what we want to do to update X is actually to take this, take the second and third column of X, matrix of features, and change it by what will be returned by this transform function of the inputter object, so that the second and third columns of X will be replaced with that average age and average salary, and therefore the whole matrix of features X will be exactly the same, but with these new average age and average salary. Okay, we're going to check that right away now. To do so, we're going to create a new code cell where we're going to print the new matrix of features X, and let's see if indeed that missing value that we can clearly see here as, once again, NaN is replaced in this new version of X. So let's not forget to run these two cells here, this first cell to indeed replace the missing data, and now this cell to print the new matrix X, and there you go, as we can clearly see, that missing salary in the previous matrix of features X was indeed replaced by the average salaries of this column. Indeed, you can check on Google Spreadsheet or Excel that 63,777 indeed corresponds to the average of actually these values. Okay, check that if you want. But there you go, now you have another tool in your data preprocessing toolkit. I'm sure you will have to use it several times when preprocessing your future data sets to build machine learning models. So congratulations, and now we're going to proceed to a new tool, which is to encode categorical data. So we'll do that in the next tutorial, and until then, enjoy machine learning.